This is the Horse Radio Network.
This is episode 1250 of Horse Tip Daily, your almost everyday morsel of helpful hints, useful facts, and practical techniques for horse folks. Brought to you today by Kentucky Performance Products. Greetings, horse people. Coach Jen here, and thanks for tuning in to Horse Tip Daily. Today I am going solo, this time with a great exercise for getting your horse loosened up, improving flexibility, or a great start for a fitness routine with a horse who has been laid off. And we'll get right to our tip after this from Kentucky Performance Products.
Her life was falling apart around her, but when she saw his sweet face and heard the low nicker, the pain eased. She stood in the stall for some time, running a brush over his sleek coat, down his powerful muscles and over his tight, cool tendons. He cocked his back leg, waiting patiently. She scratched his favorite spot and was rewarded with a crinkled smile and outstretched neck. The stress flowed from her body, and she knew with him in her life, she would make it through. This love story is brought to you by Endure Extra, providing high-fat calories, direct-fed microbials, and natural vitamin E to support optimal condition and performance. The horse that matters to you matters to Kentucky Performance Products. Call 859-873-2974 or visit kppusa.com to order today.
Well, regular listeners to the Horses in the Morning Show know that I recently got a new horse, Nigel. Nigel has been vacationing in a pasture for a little over a year, and his muscle tone and his flexibility really show it. Here is my go-to warm-up exercise, and I did it for the first time with Nigel today. I will tell you later how he did. You need some ground poles. Any old pole will do that is safe for a horse to tread over. I use some landscaping ties that are very inexpensive to buy at the local lumber yard. I use between 4 and 6. I start out by walking the horse in hand over those poles. This introduces the horse to the exercise so he knows what we're going to be asking him for. It gets him to flex his joints a little bit more by stepping over those rails. And it introduces him to engaging his hind quarters, which he might not have been doing for quite some time in Nigel's case. And it also connects the horse mentally to his feet. It's amazing how many horses just don't know where their feet are going. And then I will mount up, and on a loose rein, I let him walk through those ground poles. And then finally, I let him walk through the ground poles with contact. And you can do this English or Western, because when you ride Western, if your reins are short enough that the horse can't eat grass, you've got contact. By doing this, you're encouraging the horse to be softer through his top line, engaging his core muscles a little bit, because when he walks through and keeps his head up a little bit, he's going to have to use those core muscles to keep it there. And if you are one of those folks who can ride on the bit, I finally walk through those poles on the bit, which increases his hind end engagement further and also encourages him to lift his shoulders up a little bit. And as I said, I use between 4 and 6 poles in a straight line. And I go straight through those poles, continue for another 10 to 15 meters, make a half circle to change directions, and then come back through. I alternate each turn, left or right. And I do it the same way, whether I am doing it on the ground in hand or mounted. To add a little bit of variety, I will shorten or lengthen the distance I travel before I circle back. I also will make the circle larger or smaller depending on how difficult I want it to be and how much I want the horse to flex himself laterally. I can also introduce a turn on the haunches or a turn on the forehand instead of a half circle. I prefer the turn around the haunches or around the forehand versus the standstill variety because my horse is not so advanced that keeping the hindquarters or forehand in place is comfortable or easy for him to do. And the whole point being this should be comfortable and easy. And I do all of this without ever having to pick up a trot. I did it for about 20 minutes today, and I altered things a little bit. I would go back and forth through that set of ground poles half a dozen times, go elsewhere in the arena and work on something else, for example, some 20-meter trot circles, or I would just let him walk on a long rein and take a break, and then I would come back and do the ground poles half a dozen times again. And again, I would do that for 15 or 20 minutes tops and then go be done. Or I could go out for a little hack just for some change of scenery. So that's one of my favorite go-to exercises. And how did Nigel do today? He did very well walking through in hand, and he did very well walking through on the bit. But walking through on the loose rein, not so much. And why is this? Because Nigel, when under saddle, is naturally extremely on his forehand. When he's being led in hand, he has a natural balance, which is suitable for walking over ground poles and getting things done. But once he gets his tack on, his natural balance is right on his forehand, and he tended to tap on those ground poles a lot with his all 4 feet. So we didn't do it on a loose rein for very long. I gave him the opportunity to try and figure it out on his own. He didn't after 3 tries, so I went ahead and walked out into the arena, sent him forward into my hand and rode on the bit, and then went back and forth on the bit, and he did much, much better. But that's also harder, so I took more breaks. I would go through 2 or 3 times, take a break, and then go back 2 or 3 more times. And the distance for your ground poles at the walk is going to be somewhere between 20 and 24 inches. So there you go. This podcast was made possible through the generous support of Kentucky Performance Products and listeners like you. Learn how you can help support Horse Radio Network programming and qualify for auditors-only perks by going to horsetipdaily.com and clicking on the Become an Auditor banner on the homepage. This is Coach Jen, and I'll be back again soon with another tip. So until then, go ride your horse. The Horse Radio Network and the Horse Radio Network hosts are not responsible for statements made by guests on the Horse Tip Daily. Please use your own judgment when listening to the tips on this show.